In this video I'm going back to the craft shed, which initially I was going to make as a write-in shed, but I've been having to think about it and I think a craft shed would be better because there's just so much more I can show you how to make to go inside it. So it's going to be a Doll's House Maker's craft shed, so we'll have loads of lovely little bits in there and a little doll's house as well, which a lot of you have been asking for a tutorial for. So what I've done is I've added some hinges there to the front door, and then on the inside I want to make this into a really sort of feminine little sort of craft room. So I've just put some patterned paper in there just on the one wall, just do a feature wall there. I've added a bit of stain to the window frame and window ledge, and I've sanded and waxed the floor again. So just a really short little video just to start off with, and then we'll start making all the things to go inside. Okay, so I started off by looking for some wallpaper, and I just did a Google search and I searched for a large flower print paper and found one that I liked. I saved the image, and then using my Adobe Photoshop program I transferred that small image onto a new document that was the size, or just slightly larger than the size of the wall I wanted to cover. So if you haven't got a program like Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator or something like that where you can sort of transfer pictures into or images into, then just find a paper that is sort of a small enough pattern for 1/12 scale, or of course you can use craft paper, or of course Doll's House wallpaper. So if you're printing the paper yourself, print it out using your printer's sort of best quality setting, and then to actually fit the paper, begin by cutting lots of squares just from plain paper, so printer paper. And you want some square edges, so don't just use scrap paper, use a sort of sheet of paper if you can. And I'll be changing the blade of the knife once I've done this. Bring the craft shed in there, and then just before you get started, cut off a row of small pieces of masking tape, and we'll use this for sticking the pieces of paper onto the wall from which we're going to create a template. And I just find that a really good way of making a template so you get an exact fit rather than trying to sort of mess about in such a small space. Okay, so I've turned the shed upside down just because it's easier to get into, and then I'm just putting the first square of paper into that corner and just making sure it's straight along that bottom edge, along the skirting board and along the side, and then stick that into place with a piece of masking tape, and then bring in the second square of paper. Again, make sure it's completely straight along the bottom and the side wall, and then you can stick that to the first piece. And what I'm basically doing here is sort of like a paper patchwork to create the template, and this way it just means you get an exact fit, and it saves sort of trying to fit inside and cut and fold all of the pieces. So just keep going until you've covered all of that wall. I'm just cutting some smaller pieces here so that I can get along that edge under the window there. Cut another bit there. And again, just lay it in right up to the wall and right underneath the window ledge, and then stick it down. And just keep going until you've created a whole template. Okay, so just putting the last little strip of paper in there just above the window, and then just use any sort of bits of masking tape you've got left just to sort of cover any joins so that the template is one piece, or comes away in one piece rather than lots of little bits. Just stick that bit over that join there, and then peel away the masking tape on the actual walls very carefully so you don't rip it. And I managed to tuck a corner underneath one of the strips at the top there, and then take the tape off the other side as well, and then fold those pieces of tape under, and there is the template. Okay, so when you come to cut your piece of paper, now this may sound really obvious, but I'm only telling you because this is something I've done before and it's really annoying when you cut it out the wrong way round. So this is obviously the front, the correct side of the template, and I want that to be traced like that onto the paper. But I want to cut it out from the back because then you don't get those sort of fluffy edges along the edge of the paper that you want showing. So it's basically going to go like that. So you want to butt the front of your template up against the back or the wrong side of your paper, and then you can turn it over and work like that. And I've done that so many times, that's just why I pointed that out, not to say that you would do that at all. Okay, and then you can either do a pencil line around there and just cut it out with scissors, but I'm just going to use my knife and just go directly around the template. And what you can actually do again here is use your masking tape. Apologies again for my squeaky chair, still haven't sorted that out. And you can actually just tape it to your work surface just to hold it into place. You can cut over the tape obviously when you get to that bit. I'll just put there like that. I just want to support that thin, narrow piece across the top there. How should we do that? Like that. I'm going to cut the window out first. And when I've been cutting paper with my craft knife, I will put a new blade in before we start cutting the wood. Now I notice up there that the template curves slightly, so that must mean that my wood did at the top of the window, and that can happen, so you want to actually cut with your template. So I'll leave that piece for now. And I'll start along this bottom where it is actually straight, and then what I'm going to do along that top is actually just use the pencil to copy inside because it's not straight. So just really gently just go along so that the pencil is just following the line of the template. Like that. And once I've removed it, I can just cut that bit out. This should just come out as well. I'll just cut the main part of it out up there and go across my tape. Get rid of that piece. And then we had that little tiny corner bit in there, so I'll just cut that out. Another straight line down there. And let's take this off and have a look. That hasn't actually come completely free at the bottom. My knife blade must be getting blunt. I'll just try again. Oops. And I'm going to free it from the template, and then I can cut. I'm just going to use these small scissors to go exactly along that line. This is what I mean about those little fluffy edges. Just trim that off. Okay, let's bring the shed back in and we'll see how that looks. Okay, moment of truth. I'm putting that side in first because if you remember that was that little bit that I managed to tuck under. There, looking good so far. Okay, so there's a little bit of, I probably left a little bit too much on at the bottom there, so I've got a little tiny bit I need to take off that side, so I'll do that. And then before I put this paper in, I actually want to stain the window and the window ledge. So I'm going to mask that up, and then I'm actually going to use a wood dye on there, which is going to be the same colour I'm using for the furniture. So I just thought that would look nice, make the window coordinate with the furniture. So I'll go and get my wood dye and we'll do that next. Okay, so I've masked up the window panes, just again using small pieces of masking tape and just sticking those on until the panes are covered. And I'm going to work upside down again just because it's easier to get into that way. And for this I'm going to be using this wood dye. So the key with these is to shake them really, really well. Now a bit of an irrational fear of mine is that when you're shaking something the lid's going to come off, so always make sure the lid's really tight, and then when you're shaking always sort of have a finger on the top there and give it a really good shake, which I have actually already done. Give it another bit of a shake there. And then if you're doing a really large area you can just pour a little bit of this into a pot. It's got a child-proof lid as well there. But because I'm just doing this small area I'm just going to dip my brush into the tin. I'm just using a small brush as well for this because I don't actually want to paint on the inside of those frames, but I've masked up the window just to be on the safe side. And just, you can sort of see that way, let me come around this side a bit more. So a little tiny bit, and look how far it goes. Tiny bit on my brush there. And obviously I'm not bothered here about going above the window frame because that's going to be covered with the wallpaper. This camera I'm using isn't sort of very high tech at all. So if you do have trouble seeing or hearing, or you know it goes a bit blurry, do bear with me because it is my aim to sort of get some really nice camera equipment for my YouTube videos, so please stick with me. And we will get there in the end. And this is going to look really nice with those sort of pinks and pale greens. Just put a little bit on the inside there. I don't want to do too much because I don't want it to seep behind the masking tape. Can't wait to start putting things on this window ledge. I'm imagining some lovely little pots of flowers and maybe a pot of paintbrushes. I've done a list of all the tutorials I'm going to do for this craft shed, and it covered sort of 2 pages of a sort of shorthand notebook, so there's lots to come. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do so, and do the notification button as well, because every time I upload something it will let you know. And do give me a like as well, because I found out that the more likes I've got I'm more likely to be recommended to other users, other miniaturists, so that would be really helpful and really appreciated too. Okay, let's have a look at that the right way round. And then what you can actually do is just take a piece of kitchen towel and you can just wipe it over what you've done. And what that does is removes the excess and just gives you that lovely sort of natural appearance to the wood. That sound probably sounds absolutely awful on camera, so sorry about that. Okay. And that's all I wanted, just that sort of hint of colour there. And that will be the colour of the furniture. I'll leave that to dry, and it won't take long. It's almost sort of touch dry now. It practically is dry. So I'll just leave it another couple of minutes, and then I'll come back and we'll fit the wallpaper. Okay, so I just left that to dry for a couple of more minutes, just while I went and washed out the paintbrush. And I'm now going to apply glue to the actual wall rather than the paper. Now, I don't think there's a right or wrong way of doing it, but it's just whichever way you find easier. And I always find when the paper is covered in glue, it tends to stick together and I get in a right old mess with it. So I always put the glue onto the wall, because I just want to pour some glue in and spread that around. So I'll do that off camera because it's going to be impossible to sort of show you what I'm doing. Okay, so I've applied the glue in there now, used the spreader to spread that around, really getting along the sort of edges and the sides. I'm going to bring the paper back in, and again I'm going to start up in that corner where that tucks under. Go in there like that. Feed it round. I did trim that little bit off the bottom there. Go and get my hairdryer and just blow this all dry, and as it blow dries it actually shrinks back, so any little wrinkles you've got will sort of shrink back. Okay, so I'm just going to put this onto a low setting and give it a dry. Should do it. So the next thing I just want to do is I want to redo the floor. Now, I sanded it and applied a coat of clear wax at the time, but it now feels a bit rough and it's gone quite dry. So I've got a piece of 500 grade sandpaper here, just a small piece I've cut off. I'm going to sand the whole floor again, and then I'm going to apply another coat of wax. So once you've finished sanding, just use a nice soft brush and just brush out all of that sanding dust. Okay, so that's all now nice and dust free in there. And I'm now going to just use, just a clear shoe polish, or called neutral. And I've just got a piece of kitchen towel. And we did this in the first video if you remember, but I'm just going to sort of touch it up again, make the colour a little bit richer. So just rub it in, circular motions, and it is such dry wood that that's just soaking right in, so you can put plenty on if you need to. And I love the smell of shoe polish. But you could use scented furniture wax if you wanted to. And already that's given it a nice sort of rich colour there. So do the whole floor. And I'm just sort of getting a bit onto those skirting boards as well. Okay, so the inside is now ready for moving in, for the exciting part. But I just want to go back to the outside and to the front door, and all I actually did was put this handle on. So what I've got here are some hinges, and they're lovely ornate hinges, and these are available in my Etsy shop, and they actually come in this finish, which is sort of like a pewter, I think, or a black, so a jet black, which I'll be using for the just the normal shed, the garden shed, and they come in a lovely antique bronze as well. But I think with this green, this sort of pewter colour looks really nice. Now these come pack of 2, and they come with the screws, or the nails rather, to use them as a proper hinge. But I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to glue this on because we haven't got the sort of door that can now be hinged because we've pin hinged it. So I'm going to glue it on, so glue on the hinge and the sort of movable part just like that. So it would sort of look like a hinged door. Okay, so I'm just using normal wood glue, actually sticks these. So I've got a little bit here on a piece of card. I'll just use the cocktail stick. And you've got one side that is sort of like hammered metal or embossed metal, and the other side which is just plain, so obviously the glue goes on the plain side. Like that. And I haven't measured at all for these, I'm just going to do it by eye. You probably want it about, I don't know, 25mm from the top. And I'm just getting it straight by getting that hinge bit straight along the door. Just have a look at that, make sure it looks right. And I think that just adds such a lovely detail. And then I'm going to put another one down at the bottom. Make sure I've got the right side again. This wood glue will work with sort of other materials as long as you're gluing them to wood, so as long as one part is wood, it's pretty good on all surfaces really. Okay, so just let the glue dry off for a moment and then you can go around with a clean cocktail stick and just remove any excess glue. And I had originally just used that pewter handle as a sort of temporary fix, but I think I'm going to leave that now because that actually looks quite nice with these hinges. Okay, so that's it for this video, and we're now going to start on the furniture.